Okay, so we are on. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to have you here. So happy to have you watch the replay. My name is Erica Verdi, and today we're going to talk about going from any type of anxiety into joyous living. And this is going to be interactive for the people that are on the live broadcast. So if there's anything that you want to have explained more, or if you have a question, feel free to ask it. And I'm going to go back and forth between a presentation and then just talking, so it's not just everybody watching the words on the screen. And so a little bit about me. I have done courses for law of attraction, for intention, and I have learned my view of it, and my intention is to spread that out to help anybody and anyone who would like to expand their view. What I say might not be how you feel or the right way or the wrong way, but it's my view, and I'm really happy to get this opportunity to share it with you. And what's really important to me is that all of us realize that we are meant to live a joyous life. We are meant to live in a life of love and joy, and life is supposed to be good for you. And this time right now is a really good challenge for that, because there are so many different things going on. But in reality, we always have these challenges going on, no matter what. If it was 2021, we would have 2021 challenges. It's just a little bit more global right now, of everyone having similar challenges, which is why it feels bigger. But the intention for this webinar, for this call, is to help you to be able to negotiate through these things that happen and get back to joy as soon as possible, because things happen that knock us off. They're going to happen. You're never going to go through and I mean, I don't know, unless maybe you're a monk or something. I don't think it's possible to go through and not have life affect you. That's what relationships are all about. They're about experiencing and expanding. And so it's not about not ever reacting or not ever having a response to that, but it's about getting back to the feelings that you want to feel versus being controlled by the things that are going on around you. So I hope that makes sense for everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. Not this one. One more second. There we go. There we go. Everybody can see that? Good deal. Okay, so this is to move from anxiety to joyous living using the law of attraction. And everybody has felt anxiety at some point in time. This is a definition from Webster's, a feeling of worry, nervousness, or that something is imminently going to happen with an uncertain outcome. So I don't know, is there anybody in the group right now that has felt a little bit of anxiety towards what's going on in the world right now? Maybe a little bit?
Yeah.
So it's, I think that we have all felt that. We're all feeling that in different levels. And I'm going to get into the emotional scale in a minute. But it's normal. This is normal for a bazillion different things. So it's not, there's nothing wrong with you. There's no weakness in admitting that you feel anxiety. It's not a personality flaw or that you're not doing right. It's just stuff that happens. So I wanted to start out with just a few of what I believe are the baseline assumptions for the law of attraction. And the first one being that you are source energy in physical form. And I've spoken to this in some of the other courses I've done. I've spoken to this in some of the groups that you might have heard me speak about. But basically, the way I understand it is that we are all more non-physical energy than we are these flesh and blood human people that we are right now. And this part of us, this physical part of us, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. This physical part of us is the small part, and the non-physical part of us is the greater part, the expansive part, the part that's connected to all that isness, that connection towards God, that connection towards the universe, that connection to source. And it's so much bigger than what you see in these faces and these bodies that we have. And so a lot of times we get really caught up in this physicalness, this 80 to 100 years or so here versus the vast expanse of the universe. And we are a physical representation of that, and we do have our own characteristics or essence once before we come here and after we leave from here. So even though we join back with all that isness, there is still that essence of all of us in that. So does anybody have any questions or need any more clarity about that? Good. Okay. Trying to share again. So law of attraction, what you give your attention to grows. And this is really important because whether you're doing it deliberately towards something that you want to have happen, or you're doing it unconsciously towards something that you don't want to have happen, whatever your attention is on is going to grow. And it's going, the more energy it gets, the more of that you're going to see come into your experience. This is an inclusive universe. So I'm just going to pull it back to you guys really quick. What do you think that means when I say it's an inclusive universe? Does anybody have any guesses?
That we're all in having an experience.
Yeah, we are all having an experience. And when something is inclusive, it means that you can't rid it from you, right? It's inclusive. So if I say I want something, or if I say no, I don't want that thing, the universe doesn't realize the no. There is no within the universe. And so whether you are asking for something consciously or trying to push something away that you don't want, you're still asking for it because of where your attention is going. And so there's no way, no pun intended, there's no way to keep it away from you by saying, no, don't come near me. It actually, because you're focusing on that thing which you don't want to come near you, and so you're drawing it back into yourself. And that's one thing that people are saying, well, I didn't ask for this to happen. I didn't ask for this horrible situation to happen. I didn't ask for whatever it was. You're right, you didn't, but your attention on it brought that emotion towards you. Pat, were you going to say something?
Just as you were talking about inclusive universe, it was like the other thing that I was thinking is that everything is included. It's like there's no, I mean, bring it back to something you're talking about, I'm sure, but there's just really just one. We're all connected as one, because if it's inclusive, then I can't say, well, the universe is, I get what the universe is, but that doesn't include that person who just did that bad thing. I mean, I'm connected to everything that's happening in all ways at all times. And it's a cool way to get in touch with being a cause in the matter in life. So yeah, so that's just the thought I had as you were saying it.
That's an excellent point, and it actually makes me think about, if you can think about it as like a buffet, and you can think about like a buffet has all these things in it, but you don't have to eat all the things in the buffet. You know, you don't
Right.
have to put it all, you don't have to get offended because this thing is in the buffet that you don't like. You just skip over that thing and go to the next thing and load your plate up with what you do like. So that's a really great point, and I really appreciate that.
Sure, and I love what you're saying about the no. An example that I've heard in the past is as parents were telling our kids, don't spill the milk, don't spill the milk, don't spill the milk, and all that their brain is attracted to is spilling the milk. I mean, it's that they don't get the no. Yeah, exactly. Very cool.
Precisely. Yeah, and you can extrapolate that to a lot of things. And I do talk about that in the course as well, about how we do that. And when we do that, we attract it. So, all right, I'm going to go to the next one. Slightly slow. I need like a helper to get me quick onto the video. Anyway, so this is an inclusive universe. There is no. You can't keep something out of your experience by shouting no at it. And then, oh, sorry guys. And then how you feel about any given situation has more to do with the attractive power of that than the words that you're contributing. And so this goes into, a lot of you have heard like fake it until you make it and things like that. If you're saying words that you don't believe and inside you're feeling a different way, that inner feeling is going to dominate that attractive power that you have. And so this one is kind of a it's kind of a slippery slope, because you want to say things of what you want. You want to create with your words the ideas, the things that you want, but you also have to feel a feeling to go along with it. Does that make sense? To where if you're just saying something that you don't believe, that's better than saying something bad that you do believe. But if you don't back that up with some sort of good feeling when you say it. Now, here's a hack that I'll give you for that. Let's say, like, I want to lose about 30 pounds. I'm about 30 pounds heavier than I would like to be right now. If I just say I'm skinny, or I'm fit, or whatever, and I don't back it up with something that feels good, I'm going to actually feel worse, because I'm like, no, I'm not. I need to lose 30 pounds. But the hack is, if you can think about something good, it doesn't have to be even having to do with the losing the weight, but if you can think about something good and then put that in there about, I really love feeling fit, and then you think about something that makes you feel good, those will join together, and then you can start having that associative power with those words. Even though I don't believe that I'm fit right now, if I can think about being fit and then right with it, join it with something that also makes me feel really good, whether it's my children or a rainbow or hot air balloons in the sky or whatever, whatever it is that gives you a little yellow-bellied bird, or I don't know, whatever makes you smile and feel good. If you can do that, then pretty soon you'll start to get that associative pattern with the I'm fit, to where then when you do say I'm fit, you already start to feel good because you've been joining it together with this thing that makes you feel good. Does that make sense? So.
Yeah, for me, it kind of, when you said that, it kind of made me think about Peter Pan, and how when you were sprinkled with the pixie dust, you weren't able to fly unless you believed and actually had a good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That whole movie was about, childlike feelings and everything like that. So I don't know, it's just focusing on like the one specifically with Robin Williams, because that's my favorite one. But anyways, that's all I could think about.
That's so funny that you mentioned that. I actually just watched that movie again when I was flying home from Florida, and I was like crying. I was like, I love it. So no, that's perfect. Think a happy thought, and that's really what it is. It's really about kind of tricking your mind into associative patterns that start to bring that about. Because any little happy thought you have, who doesn't want to have more happy thoughts? Doesn't matter what the thought is about, but who would rather have a not happy thought or a happy thought? You know what I mean? Like, even if whatever you're going through, you'd rather experience a happy thought. So, all right. So thank you for that. Does anybody else have any comments before we move on?
I've heard it described, by the way, as emotional shape shifting,
Okay.
because it really is like taking this one emotion and bringing it and like transforming how you feel in this moment based on something that you know, a memory or an association with something. So I love the way you're putting that. That's perfect.
Yeah, that's great. I haven't heard that, and I like that. I like that.
Erica,
Yes.
I had a question. If
Sure.
you could say more about like the focus piece, given that, is there a particular time frame for the focus? Is it just a rapid thinking that happens? Because many times, if it's that way where we attract everything, either positive or negative, how is it that focus gets triggered?
Are you saying like a focus towards a negative thing or towards a positive, or?
No, it's going back to the premise that we attract everything, right? From
Yep.
either the positive or the negative. But then the brain is constantly thinking about stuff and
Right.
we're always feeling stuff.
Correct.
So when you refer to focus, is it for a particular time, or it could be just a nanosecond and that just attracted?
Yeah, so it actually, to answer your question, we're going to go into that in just a minute, but it's more important to realize and start to recognize how you feel in any given situation. And just like you said, you're going to be going all over the place. I'm going to talk a little bit about the emotional scale in a second. And throughout thinking about an instance that affects you, you're going to go up and down on the emotional scale. It's not that you have to be vibrating on all the time at the highest level, but what we're working on to be able to get to that joyous life is to be able to recognize all the emotions that you're feeling, and then to be able to move up into the emotions that you want. And a hack that you can do that in the sense of if you're trying to convince yourself of something that you don't necessarily believe, is to think about something that makes you feel good. That also works in any situation. And I'll get more in depth with that, but any situation that you're in, if you want to feel a little bit better, you can think about a happier thought in that moment, or think about a better feeling thought in that moment, and it's going to move you up from where you are. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and I think the next section that I talk about is going to tie into this even more. Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
Just a quick question. So
Sure.
just to clarify, so even like the happier thought doesn't have to be directly related to the weight loss, like you were saying.
No. And oftentimes it's really hard for us to actually think about something. Like, if you're going through something, the next section is contrast. And if you're going through something that causes you to feel contrast, oftentimes it's kind of big. And so to be able to feel something good about that situation right then might be impossible for you where you're at right now. But we can always find something that makes you feel a little bit better, even if it's just thinking about a food, or thinking about a person, or like what Pat was saying, going to a memory or something like that. There's always something that you can find. And so yeah, does that answer your question? Okay, good. All right, anybody else? Sure. I don't have my mouse, so I'm slower. See, that's contrast, right? It makes me learn. So contrast shows us really, really clearly what we don't want. think about it as when you are growing your attractive power, right? When you're growing, some people call it your vortex of attraction, your vibrational escrow, the things that you are attracting into your life usually come from contrast. So something happens that you don't like. Let's say someone is rude to you, or there was an experience that you had that you didn't like, or a million different things. It could be a business interaction that you didn't want. In that moment of that contrast happening, you realize that you don't like that, and you set off a rocket of attraction towards what you do want, the opposite of that experience. So in the moment that something happens that you do not want, you don't like that experience, right? So something happens that you don't want, you feel bad. In that moment that you feel bad, you are actually sending out a rocket to feel better. You're sending out a desire to have the opposite experience of that in feeling, okay? Because that feeling doesn't feel good. Now, before I move on, I want to make sure that I'm explaining this in a way that you can connect to. So let's use like the freeway, right? You're driving down the freeway and somebody's really rude to you, right? That doesn't feel good in that moment that happens. So in that moment that happens, you're actually sending out a desire for courteous drivers unconsciously. Now, what most people do when these contrasting experiences happen is they focus on the contrast instead of what the contrast has had them grow to experience. Okay, in that moment, you are now, your non-physical part of you has expanded into courteous people, you meeting courteous people on the road. But if you get stuck in what actually caused the expansion, and you talk about that driver, and you get online and you post about him, and you talk to your friends about him, and everybody else has their own stories, and you get going in there, you're contributing to the opposite of where you just expanded. And so you're going to stay in that spot, and nothing's going to happen to what's expanded. It's not going to go away. But until you can get in alignment with that, you're not going to have that experience of a courteous driver. In fact, the more you stay here, you're going to have, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm always with these courteous, like these people are always doing this. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything to share on that? No? All right. Thank you for being patient with me and my technical stuff. Okay, so most people focus on what caused the contrast, how the contrast made them feel, and how to fix the contrast, right? The guy cut me off, I felt bad, I'm gonna give him the finger next time, right? As if that's gonna do something, right? But that's how we try to fix things sometimes, right? Or maybe it's I'll go around, I'm not gonna go on that road anymore. But that's not really fixing anything. You can't fix anything until you are right inside yourself first. You don't want to take any action until you get into alignment. You want to get in alignment first and then take action, especially when contrast has happened. So think about it. If you were in the car, somebody did that, and you respond in that moment, you're not paying attention to the road anymore. You're in that event. You might not be paying attention to people in the car. You're not present anymore, right? You're in some contrasting experience. But if you can get back into yourself, and this is a really good, this goes on what Anicia was mentioning, you know, and if you can actually say, and this is really difficult, how did I attract that? How did I attract that person into my experience. What was going on in my vibe, either now or earlier or whenever? How did I draw that experience into my experience? And then when you can do that, you're going to turn that corner towards, I really enjoy courteous people. And when you start to take personal responsibility for what's happening to you, then you start looking into the side of the solutions, and then you start into that attractive power of what caused the expansion for you. And the expansion is courteous people, is always being able to pull onto the freeway and never really having those experiences. Does that make sense? Anybody have any comments, questions?
I've often questioned, I get it, and I get the concept of we attract it all to us, but then how do you resolve you're driving down the freeway and somebody swerves into your lane and hits you? Did I attract that? Did I cause that? In one sense, I can get it conceptually, like, well, you can't say that you attract or cause some things and not include everything. But then I can't resolve for myself, like, how to not make myself wrong. And well, if I attracted that, what am I doing wrong in life, or what? So how do you resolve that for yourself?
Yeah. So Pat just walked into the minefield, and you are absolutely right. And I might lose some of you on this, but what he's saying is actually true. You do attract all of these things. And then people say, well, what about the baby? What about the person that doesn't even know about this, doesn't even know about the law of attraction? How do they attract? And we are energetic. We are powerful, energetic beings. I think John commented something. Let me just read what by focusing on the positive, you attract the positivity. Yeah, that's absolutely true. So oftentimes we're not attracting cancer. We're not attracting someone hitting us with the car. Okay, we're not thinking about that. We're not focusing on that thing. But there's something going on inside of us that led us to the freeway at that moment, at that time, where that person was there and we interacted, versus being more often in alignment to where 5 minutes before we had to go, there was a phone call, or we had to run to the bathroom, or something happened, or we took a different turn, or whatever, and we missed that. We weren't in the line of fire for that. And a good example of that is right now with COVID, right? Everybody's in the line of fire for this, right? It's a global thing. It's affecting Amazon tribes, and everybody is affected from this. So did we attract this on a global level? And I think we did. We didn't necessarily all come together and say, all right, guys, we need a global pandemic. Like, that's what we need right now. But there was enough of imbalance and enough things going on to where this opened itself up. And on the other side of it, there are positives from it. There are things, whenever there's any kind of contrast, there's expansion. And so no matter what is happening to you, aware that you're causing it or not, there's always room for expansion. And this goes into, I wasn't going to talk about this too much in here, but to go one step further is that there isn't really any right or wrong in the non-physical. Okay? It's not a system of duality outside. Here it is. In this realm, there's right, there's wrong, there's day, there's night, there's male, there's female, all of these things. Outside of this realm, when you don't have your body and you don't have a voice and there isn't right and wrong in the sense that we know it here. And the reason I say that is because if you think about, like, different countries have completely different rules of what's right and what's wrong. I used to be married to an Indian, and in India, it's fine for a man to go to urinate on the side of the road, in the sidewalk or whatever. Like, it's not a big deal. But two people wouldn't kiss in public there. And it's exactly the opposite here, right? But is it right here and wrong there? Or is it, is it opposite? It's just, these are things that we have here. So I'm off on a little bit of a tangent from there, but I want to throw that out onto, just as another layer onto this, that these things that are happening, we are attracting them by our energy, by our emotions and our feelings. And that's what I'm going to go into the next section. It's kind of interesting how this is all unfolding, because your question goes into that, where you attract how you feel. I have some family members who are experiencing different things, and when I go back to analyze it, they won't want to hear this. They're going to say that I'm insensitive, or that I don't care, or that that's not true. But when you focus on things that give you a return of a certain feeling. So if you're posting and you're always posting, missing children. Some people say, well, how else would people know about that if you don't post it? But there's a feeling associated with that. That's it's a very tough feeling, and it has a lot of other feelings that go along with it. So the more you focus and the more energy you put into that, the more you want to fight against something that you feel is wrong, fighting against it, stopping it. You're putting your energy into that versus trying to find a solution and putting your energy towards a solution. Because whatever you fight against, you're actually helping that thing that you're fighting against, because you're giving it attention. And attention and energy are where power lives. So does that answer your question, Pat, a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, I never heard it put that way. So thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I do. What you're saying, like how you're putting energy and it like attracts it, it also reminds me of like avoidance, and how like avoidance strengthens the importance of whatever you're avoiding. So like when you avoid dealing with your problems, it only grows. So when you were saying that, I was like, oh, this is kind of like avoidance as well, because a lot of times, to avoid conflict, like with my mom, I tend to avoid conversations with her. And that just makes it just grow and grow bigger, because I'm giving it more power over me. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, and you're giving more, you're thinking more about, I don't want to have that conversation. And because you don't want to have that conversation, it's actually increasing on her side to want to have that conversation, because you're pushing it away, and it's actually drawing her closer to you. In that, even though you're like, no, I don't want any drama. I don't want to deal with it. And so a way that I would say, and this is super difficult, it's difficult. It's a simple concept, but it's difficult to do. And if you can start to imagine the interactions that you would want to have, whether it's with a child, a parent, a colleague, if you can just start right where you are, not leave the situation and then try to deal with it, but just right where you are, if you can imagine it in the way that you want and consistently do that. And that's where you might have to sandwich that in between things that make you feel good, because if it doesn't make you feel good to think about that, you might have to bring some of those in there. But if you can do that, magic starts to happen. There was no blue skies here at all. It was, in fact, on Wednesday, the Wednesday I went back to work after we came back from our trip, it was black in the sky until noon. It was horrific. But I knew there were blue skies above. I kept thinking about blue skies. I kept appreciating about blue skies. I kept tricking my mind that the clouds were actually rain clouds, and that the little sprinklings of rain were going to come and give us some rain. And then last weekend we went to Reno, and I found some a little patch of blue sky and just absorbed that piece into me. And then by the middle of this week, we had blue skies again. And you say, well, Erica, come on, like, you can't control the weather, but intention is powerful. Intention is powerful. And I'm not the only person that was thinking about blue skies, but it's much more powerful. You being intentional about your relationship with your mom. Your mom's not being intentional about her relationship with you. She's just doing her thing. So you being intentional, us being intentional about whatever it is that we want is so much more powerful than people who are just kind of floating along, even if there's a bunch of them floating in the same direction. You being intentional is so much more powerful than millions who are not being intentional. So I want to give you guys that power because it's true. You have it inside of you. We all have it. We all have the same access to it, and we're all going for different things. So me being intentional about my thing doesn't take away from any of you being intentional about yours. There's abundance is our birthright. So does that answer your question, Sheila?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a thought. Mm-hmm.
Okay, or comment?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, so go back here. All right, so now we're talking about emotions and feeling, and how you feel is an indication to how you are responding to contrast. Right? So contrasting things are happening to us all the time. And how you feel is how you are responding to that. So I mentioned about your non-physical expanding, and you do not. You feel the pull of the negative feelings or emotions. So oftentimes when we have interactions with our family members or coworkers or whatever else, we have a negative feeling from the interaction. And we feel that it's the other person, what they did, what they said, how they were, that is actually what is making us feel bad. Have you guys ever experienced that where you're like, you know, if that person wasn't being a butthead, I wouldn't feel bad, you know? Like it's totally, like they're obviously, like, look at them, guys. Like I got on video, like they're obviously being a butthead. That's why I feel bad. Well, I can't disagree with that, but I can say that your inner source, that source that Pat mentioned is connected to the whole universe, that inner source is pure unconditional love. Pure unconditional love for everything. And so when that piece of you, which is mostly pure unconditional love, with a little bit of person hanging out here, feels a negative thought about that other person who is mostly unconditional love, and then this little butthead, you know, acting like a brat here, your connection between your physical and your non-physical has a problem with that. Because you're feeling a negative feeling towards this, but your unconditional part of you doesn't feel that way. And that's why you feel bad. It's not what that other person did that made you feel bad. It's that difference between how your unconditional feels about that situation or person and how you're feeling about it. That's feeling off. That's that off feeling. And again, this goes back to that personal responsibility for how you feel versus blaming. No, they were obviously being a jerk. Any culture, any country, any language, that was being a jerk. Yes, but you're responsible for how you feel, not that person. And when you give that away to someone else, then you're always at the mercy of them behaving in a way that pleases you, which is never going to happen because they've got their own desires that they're following. So if you try to have somebody else respond in a way that pleases you, you're always going to be let down. So you have to get right with yourself. And it's not easy. It's not easy to love someone unconditionally that's being a freaking crazy person, right? Like we've all experienced that. That's not an easy thing to do. But if you can understand that your feelings towards that person isn't actually because of what they did. That feeling that you're feeling is a separation. It's not even a separation because you're never separated from your source, but it's a rub between what your source knows to be true and how you are interpreting the situation right now. Now, this is like kind of big, so I'm just curious if there's anybody has any comments or feelings or additions or just things that they're thinking right now. Go ahead.
Well, I do have a comment slash question. How would you differ from, so like that person being a butthead, right? And then you are upset because they're being a butthead, but then say this is a week from now. And I
Sure.
remember what Erica said, and now I'm like, okay, well, I have to stop feeling like this and or not stop feeling like this, but intentionally think about how to feel better. How is my inner self going to, you know, take over and have that unconditional love? Well, that would be, you know, not necessarily forgetting about that person, but just kind of putting that, you know, yourself in their shoes. Maybe they're having a bad day. So couldn't you not only vibrate yourself to a higher level, but send positivity their way because, you know, you're now thinking about, well, what's making them be a butthead? Is it, you know, I've gotten to the point where I can take care of myself, but why is that person doing that thing? So how do you, and then, and if I'm saying this right, now that I'm thinking about that person and why they're doing the things they're doing, am I still attracting that negative energy for them to continue their day to be bad or crappy or whatever? So how
Yes.
does that,
So you
how do
brought
you
up
kind of get around that?
you brought up a couple of different things in there,
Mhm.
and it made me think about, so some of those we're going to talk about in the next section, but so just popped right out of my head. But how to so when you were talking about the other person feeling in that feeling of being off, okay, so when any of you on this call, there's been experiences in your life where through whatever happened, you felt complete joy, elation, empowerment, love, freedom, where through from the top of your head to your toes, you experienced feeling really, really good. We've all had that experience at some point in time through some way, feeling connected. When you are feeling connected, that is when you are linked up with your non-physical, right? Like it's if it's like a tube going down, the tube is clear and the energy is flowing back and forth, right? When we are knotted up with stuff going on, we've pinched that hose off. It's never going to stop going. Even if we pinch it off from here, it's still coming to us. It's kind of like how the skies are blue even though it's cloudy. You just can't see it. It's the same thing. We're like, no, there's smoke everywhere. I can't breathe, whatever. No, there's blue skies above there. Same thing with that. What you're talking about with this person, instead of feeling compassion or sympathy, not sympathy, but compassion for them, and then realizing this person is so far out of alignment or they wouldn't be acting like that. They might not ever even understand this conversation that we are having right now. It might be just so far beyond them to ever even listen to the words, let alone understand them, because they can't take responsibility for how they feel. And so they're lashing out in whatever way they are. You know, there's a whole scale of negative emotions and feelings, but it's based out of being out of alignment. And that is why we are working on going from anxiety to joy so that we are in alignment. And then, as Anicia brought up earlier, so we can keep getting back to that when we do fall out of alignment, when we do pinch off that source, because we're human. We have these things that happen to us, but the goal is to get back to it. So that's one piece of what you were saying. And then I'm going to give you some In the next section, I'm going to talk about how we can incrementally work up ourselves, because you're right. You can't be faced with a butt head and just go, oh, I love that guy. Oh my gosh, so great. Like, I can't believe I ever thought he was a butthead. He's just totally fabulous. It's not possible. When you're at rage, you can't go from rage to joy. It's not possible to make that jump, and you don't want to anyway, which I talk about in the end, because you don't want those kinds of variances. You want to keep it pretty, right now, if you're going really high up and really far down, there's going to be a counteraction for that. So we're going to have those, but we want to smooth it out a little bit. Okay. That's a great point. Does anybody else have any other things they want to mention about any of this so far? Okay, so what you were talking about, the shifting. So we have emotional set points and the emotional scale, the role of imagination, and then the reduction of the variance, which is what I was just talking about with, you don't want to have that huge amount of difference in what you're doing. And I'm going to go next to, so if you've ever read or heard of Abraham Hicks, there's a book by Abraham Hicks called Ask and It Is Given. And in the back of the book, there is a list. I didn't use their exact list. This is my list, but it's based off of this scale that you can have. But basically, hopelessness is at the very bottom. Hopelessness, despair, that is at the very, very bottom. That's when people are suicidal. That's, someone's experienced a great loss. They don't feel like they can do anything about the situation. They're very weak in that moment. You can't go from there all the way up. But a good place to go would be to go one step up from there, would be to go to revenge or to anger. And if you're thinking about a person who's hopeless, like say you've got someone in your family who's feeling that way, and you think, well, I don't really want them angry because they're already hard to deal with, hopeless, but at least they just kind of lay there. If they're angry, they might be breaking things. But that's a better feeling thought than hopelessness. It's up the emotional scale. You don't want to stay there. You don't want to remain in anger or revenge, but it is better than hopelessness. And when you're dealing with a feeling that's making you feel really low, you want to inch your way up the emotional scale to be able to get back to joy. And so sometimes it takes getting through some of these that are, like frustration. Frustration is better than anger, right? You moved from anger up the emotional scale and now you're in frustration. It's better than hopelessness. And then maybe from frustration, there's annoyance. This one, the other list says pessimism. Annoyance or pessimism. Oops. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. This is a different program here. So anyway, indifference. They say boredom. Indifference or boredom. That's better than being annoyed by something, right? But you're not yet onto what you want to be attracting. Then we move over, I guess we move over to boredom. Then we move over to hope, okay? When you start to have hopefulness or contentment, you are getting onto the side that is going to be actively attracting. You're actively attracting on the other side, but you don't want to be actively attracting over there. So that's the side that you want to work your way up over into the start of the emotions. And this list isn't isn't the only way you could put this order, and this is just what made sense to me, but you get the idea. So contentment, excitement, expectancy, joy, and love and appreciation. And so, as you can see, if you've got someone who is sad and they're all the way over here on hopelessness, to try to just tell them to buck up and get over into appreciation might not work, because that's a big jump. But if they can work on a better feeling thought, and a better feeling thought, that better feeling thought that they think of, might be, okay, well, I'm gonna kill all these people that made me feel like this. That'll be better. Well, it's better, but that's not going to be very useful. Well, now I'm just mad at all these people, or now I'm just frustrated with them, annoyed with them. You're moving up. And as I mentioned earlier, if you can think of small things that bring you some sort of joy, some sort of focus that you can do, that takes your focus off the fact that you are having feelings of revenge or feelings of anger, you're going to be able to move up that emotional scale easier. So the role of imagination in this is really big, because kind of going back to what you were saying about the Peter Pan, you want to use your imagination, use your memories, use your things to be able to work your way out of that moment. And like what Shiva was asking with, well, can I think about anything? Yes, you can think about anything at all that makes you feel a little bit better. Now, if you've suffered some kind of great loss, just thinking about like a happy memory isn't going to draw you out completely, but it's going to pull you up. And if you can start to be aware of those patterns and going from feeling the ways that you don't want to the ways that you do want. Now, one point I just realized I didn't mention when I was talking about how when we feel off, the other reason that we feel off is because our non-physical knows that we are an attractive being, and knows that when we're having those negative feelings towards that butt head that we talked about earlier, that we're attracting more of that. And they're like, stop doing that. That's why there's that off feeling. It's like, don't do that anymore. And when you're feeling good, that you feel good, and you're attracting more of that. Go back over here. So, I don't know why I went back. Sorry, guys. So pleasing others. One of the biggest things that a lot of people do is really put so much on what other people think, how they judge how you look, how they judge how you sound, how they judge what you're doing or you're not doing. And just as I mentioned before, that no one can please you in enough ways to really be able to make you happy, you can't please anybody else either. The only person that you are beholden to is yourself. That's the only person that you need to be working on actively pleasing is yourself. And that sounds selfish, but it's just like the face mask in the airplane. If you don't put it on yourself first, you can't help others. If you are pleasing others, you're never going to help them or yourself, because they're going to be dependent on what you living up to this thing that they created for you, but it's not real because that's not where you're coming from. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any comments on that? So, yeah, go ahead.
I'm not quite getting that one. So can you just say more about how pleasing others is causing expansion, or it's causing you to be disconnected?
It impacts your expansion. So if I am, let's take my children. If I want to do things that I feel like are going to please them, Okay. Now this is different from things that make me feel good. Okay. I'm only doing it because they're expecting me to do it, or they want it, and somehow I feel off about it. So that's the prerequisite, or the framing
So
of it.
that's the part I was missing, because
Yeah.
so it's not like if you do something because you want to please others and make a difference for others or make others happy, that in itself isn't a disconnect. It's when it feels off for you, but you're doing it anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
Uh,
If it feels
I got
off for you. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Because
Okay.
yeah, you don't want to be pleasing people. And if you're feeling that rub, then you should look back and be like, okay, is it because I really don't want to be doing this, or is it some other thing? And that's where that analyzation starts to come in, not over analyzing, but at least like recognizing, okay, is it because I really don't want to do this, or am I just feeling off before I'm doing this? And again, that goes back to, don't do anything when you feel off. If you can just be like, I just don't take action or make decisions when I feel off, and you just give it a minute. And the more you think about something, you're either going to feel better about it or you're going to feel worse about it. And so it just takes a little, the more you mull over anything, it's like, yeah, that feels really good. I do want to do that to please them, or why am I doing this? It doesn't, the more I think about it, I don't like that. So
Okay, good.
that's
Thank
a great point. Thank you for asking that question. So, good deal. So I mentioned this a little bit before. Action is not the way to affect outcomes. You can never take action alone, enough action, doing all the right things to make something happen. But if you take your alignment first and you get in alignment and then you take action, then you're virtually unstoppable for what it is that you want to happen, because you are intentional, you're in alignment, and you're taking action. Then the things that you want to have happen are going to happen. And you cannot cause enough action to make someone else change. If you guys have ever had to deal with kids or siblings or anything, and you try to get them to do something, there's not enough action for them to do it, or when they do it, it's not done in a way that is pleasing. They just did it. So you have to get right inside first and then move towards your action. And split energy is when you have, that you want to be doing something, but then you're on both sides of it. It's like that contrast where you don't want people to cut you off, and you want people to be courteous, but you still keep thinking about that. You start over here and then you keep going back. And whenever you do that, it's virtually like going in forward and then going in reverse, and going in forward and going in reverse. And you're not consciously creating what you want in that moment, because you're going back and forth and back and forth. You got to be clear on what you want, and you're not going to see, as I wrote in here, you won't see the full expansion of your positive manifestations that you created as soon as that contrast happened. But you're not going to see that until you get alignment with the direction you want to go, or the direction you don't want to go. And then you're going to be in alignment with what you don't want. So we're almost done here, guys. So I've talked about this. A lot of you guys know, we've talked about it. Gratitude is generally something that talks from something that you've overcome, where you were in something that was hard, and then you came on the other side of it, and now you have gratitude because you're not there anymore. Whereas appreciation is on the top of the emotional scale. It's right up there. It's the highest vibration that you can feel, and it stands on its own. Appreciation is without any ties to anything that you've had to overcome. And I talk about this in my course a little bit more deeply, but having appreciation for something, you can be grateful in appreciation for something, but appreciation in and of itself it doesn't have a tie to anything negative. It doesn't have a tie to something that you've overcome. It's on its own. How a child wouldn't necessarily realize that they've gone through something and they're happy now. They just look at something and enjoy it. They don't know the struggles that went on before that. They just are in the moment enjoying it. Does that make sense? And now a lot of you have heard this before, but I wanted to touch on. I do touch on it more in the course. So
I just put it in a way like how you were talking about, like on the freeway, like say you're going on a trip and it was horrendous traffic. There was buttholes all over the freeway, blah, 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 blah. And then when you get there, I'm so grateful to be out of the car. Well, that's what you're saying. You're grateful because you're not in that traffic. So
Correct.
You're still focusing on that negative condensation of where you were, instead of I'm appreciative that I'm at my destination, I'm here with my family, I'm gonna have a good time, whatever the case may be. I know what the difference is, and I just kind of wanted to kind of put it in a perspective that you were saying as far as like the freeway and stuff like that.
I love it. That's great. Perfect. So so yeah, that's basically the end of my presentation here. And I think this slide is a little busy, so I think I'll probably make it not so busy. So next steps, I have a Facebook group that is about creating the life that you want. And then I also have a course that I have set up. It's a 4-week course, and it is $44 for the beta group that we're gonna put in there. It's only gonna be a few people in there. I'm gonna cap it at 22 so that we can really dive deep into this stuff. And if that is something that you are interested in, then you can make a commitment by sending me a message and saying, yeah, I'd like to do it, and make a commitment to yourself. But I really just wanted to appreciate all of you for being here today, for taking time, for listening to this. I know I went a little bit over on time, but yeah, and if there's any questions that you have or anything that you want to, any other thoughts or inspiration or aha moments that you guys had, what you think about it, I can stop recording. Well, maybe I'll keep recording.
Erica, I'm just curious about your course. Like, what's included in that, or what do you do? Are there weekly calls, or?
Yeah, so it's a 4-week course. There will be 4 Zoom calls. There's 6 videos. There's 4 course videos, and then like an intro and a closing. And there's worksheets that you do, and then also interactive in the Facebook group. There is accountability to help encourage, and then as people are moving through the coursework, they can comment, and if there's questions or if there's ideas, and then before the Zoom, there will be a question and answers to where if you can't make it to the Zoom live, we can still cover the question so that way everybody's covered. So yeah, good question. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for showing.
Really exceptional. Very well done, Erica.
Thank you very much. Thank you. John, did you have any other questions or comments or anything? If you're still there. About the camera, it's hard to tell. So good stuff. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on. I really appreciate the support.
You did a great job, Erica.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you, guys. All right. Well, hopefully